chemicals coming out of landfill gas, when you hear about air pollution and people say, oh, it meets all the state and federal criteria, air quality criteria, well, what you need to understand is the criteria that are in place for protecting us are for those who have bad lobbyists. There's criteria pollutants and non-criteria pollutants. The criteria pollutants are the ones with bad lobbyists that got regulated. The non-criteria pollutants under federal law are the pollutants that are not regulated, that have great lobbyists, or nobody's tried to go after them. And thank you, Peter.
I think you should be the next presenter.
And so I just want to make sure that you really hear loud and clear that it is not an acceptable alternative, and there's science behind it. To get the details of the science, go to Gaia, which is the Global Anti-Incinerator Alliance, no-burn.org. And this is for the edification of the
Let me ask one question, because I completely agree with everything you've said. We heard a presentation, and I might be naive, on pyrogenesis, on gasification from a company up in Montreal that claimed that there was no escape. My thinking was that if that's absolutely true, could this potentially be used to deal with our landfills?
No.
No, okay.
And that's why the Zero Waste International Alliance has been very clear, 200 degrees Fahrenheit, no question. Thermal processes, not biological processes. We're not against chemistry, physics, natural systems, biological systems, addressing these problems, coming up with the next Nobel Prizes, which some of the members of this audience will come up with on how to solve this problem. But thermal processes have been documented by the science as not acceptable. When you hear about gasification, ask, is it a thermal process? If it is, talk to Mike Ewald and Gaia.
Okay. Well, I stand very corrected. Can you delete that phrase from my slide, please? Any other questions? And I really do appreciate that. I'd love to get your card afterwards. Any other questions or comments? Yes.
Do you know that the bioplastics attract toxins the same way that regular plastics do in the ocean?
That's a great question. I don't know the answer to that. I would suspect, some of the bioplastics, there are many different categories. There's the PHA and the PLA. The PHA is supposedly marine degradable. I would like to see more proof of that. Do they sorb pollutants? Actually, I don't know. I wonder if anyone else knows that. We did some testing on PLA plastics with the junk raft. We filled a mesh bag full of spudware and corn forks and all kinds of different bioplastics, and Marcus dragged them behind the junk raft for 3 months, and zero change at the end of 3 months. So most of them need a microbe-rich, high-heat environment to break down, and that's definitely not the ocean. But yeah, I don't know the answer to that question. Yes?
Thanks so much. It's just a presentation. Really enjoyed it. And I came in a little late, so you might have mentioned this, but I'm wondering if you got a measurement of what types of plastics you found. Like, what was the most prevalent one?
Mostly what we find is polyethylene and polypropylene, because these will these will float. I mentioned before that what's throughout the water column and on the ocean floor is a big unknown. We just haven't really done those studies for the plastics that are negatively buoyant. In terms of what kinds of products, it's really difficult to say, because once we get out to sea, most of it is fragmented. We don't find polystyrene, it's another one that sinks. So the vast majority is polyethylene and polypropylene.
Thank you for your presentation, it's fantastic. So my question is, have you presented this to the plastics industry?
We haven't ever been invited to like a formal presentation. Certainly had lots of run-ins. Anytime, my husband's done a lot of testifying at state capitals or city councils, and there's always a representative or two from the American Chemistry Council, or I can't remember what their new name is now, there to refute our studies with their own peer-reviewed papers, not peer-reviewed, but their own literature published and funded. So, no, we haven't formally presented it. They are very well aware of the issue. No one wants to see plastics in the ocean, including the plastics industry. We've invited one industry professional to actually join us on board to see this issue for himself, and it was very enlightening. And we'd love to get more people on board. But if you have any opportunities for us to share to the plastics industry,
And what about the cosmetic industry?
No, that's another great one. You know, we did band together on the microbeads campaign with the Safe Cosmetics Council. I can't remember their full name. But no, we haven't presented specifically to the cosmetic industry.
Thank you.
But two good ideas.
Thanks for your presentation. It was incredible. We all know that companies love to do branding. It's all about branding. So maybe they would like to brand their bottle caps, and we could get Coca-Cola to brand all of their bottle caps, and we can start to source where some of these identifiable objects are coming from.
That is a fabulous idea. No, it's really interesting. We had a chance to talk to one of the VPs of Sustainability for Procter & Gamble, and what we heard loud and clear was, until we can see without any shadow of doubt how our Tide bottle is getting from the consumer's hand into the ocean, we can't really do anything about it. Because again, like I said before, it's not that your average person is taking that Tide bottle and chucking it into the street. It gets there many different ways, and there's no value at the end of that life cycle. But it makes it difficult to hold a company accountable or responsible. The BP oil spill, we can point to a company and say, you did this. But with plastic, it's natural gas and petroleum. We like to call it the largest petroleum spill in the world, but you can't point your finger to a company or a country. I mean, we can take some good guesses, but we had an opportunity to have audience with Pepsi Cola recently, which we were very hesitant to go into. It's hard to know as a small nonprofit to what degree do you engage with the big players. Can you really make a big difference without engaging those big players? But they were interested to hear about it, so if we have an opportunity, I'll share that idea.
Hi, thanks for being here. I like that we were just thinking about talking the cosmetics industry, the plastics industry. And I was wondering if you had any other ideas about how the recycling and waste industry could become further engaged and take action in this issue.
That's kind of why I'm here, is really just to share the problem, because I think that you have the innovation and the ideas. I don't necessarily, I'm not a chemist by nature, so I don't know what the best way to design for recycling is. That's the challenge I pose to you in this room. And if anyone has an idea, now is a great time to chime in. Hello. She may have a lot of ideas.
I just want to share with the group, it's more of a comment than a question, since we're talking about bottle caps, when I do beach cleanups and creek cleanups, I never find Tide bottle caps. The bottle caps that I find clearly came from beverage containers. And we know that when we look at time series data from the state of Hawaii, which passed their container deposit law, otherwise known as a bottle bill, in 2005, we can clearly see that the International Coastal Cleanup data from prior to 2005 shows that they were picking up, of the things that they picked up, about 15% of them were beverage containers. After 2005, it took a couple of years for the program to fully be implemented and kick in, but for several years in a row, we've seen that percentage drop to 7%. So that's an area where we have time series data. It's the same people in the same state doing the same activities. Before there was container deposit law in place, beverage containers were 15% of litter. They dropped to 7% afterwards. And we have that actually 30 years worth of data from different states, from International Coastal Cleanup data. However, the other interesting thing about the Hawaii data is that we found that the percentage of caps and lids didn't go down. People are picking up the bottles, but they're not picking up the bottle caps, and that's what you're finding. And you're not finding the PET bottles that have sunk, because you haven't done the data yet to find out what's in the water column. And I just wanted to add that information to this, that we have something that we know works really well, and and we need to do it everywhere now.
We've got time for two more questions. Or, yeah. Okay, yes.
Hi, yeah, thank you for your presentation, it's great. I have a question about the lids issue. Has anybody ever looked into having, and we have deposits and California redemption on the bottle, what if you could create value with the lid by putting the 1 or 2 cent deposit on that? I think that would take a lot of those out of the waste stream potentially.
Absolutely. As soon as you can put value to it, people have an incentive to not chuck it. I mean, I think that's been shown very well with bottle bills, just the massive spike when you do have EPR incentivized recovery.
Has anybody ever tried to do deposits on the lid?
International legislation that all manufacturers of bottled beverage products, they would have to fund a fund for reclamation.
The deal is that
Okay, yes.
the deal is that they have to take the caps back as part of the bottle. So the recommendation, contrary to a lot of the common knowledge out here, is you keep the bottles on the caps on the bottles when you're done. Because they got perforators and then they separated by floating. The lease law, the lease deal was the answer that we were looking at, and it didn't make it to the legislature. But I think
Not yet.
a penny on the cap and 5 cents on the bottle, I think that's a real good idea.
Yeah, absolutely. I know a lot of people, part of the Clean Seas Coalition, I know a few people who are very interested in that idea of leash the lid, of just a tiny little leash that keeps the lid to the bottle. But a deposit is also a great idea. And I just wanted to add, I didn't answer someone's question really well about what are some ideas for engagement. What about charging people for garbage? I wonder if that would ever fly in this country, because it's been shown to work in other countries, but.
So going back to your Tide bottle and how to track that, I've just engaged with a gentleman who started a digital landfill called Literati. I don't know if you're familiar.
Literati?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm engaging my students to take on this project. But basically, if you have a smartphone and Instagram, kids all over the world now are taking pictures on their Instagram and posting them of waste wherever they feel. So if they're on a hike or at the beach, and so you see a Tide bottle. And what he wants to do is gather that data and go back to Tide and all these companies and say, this is where we're finding all your trash, and here's my digital landfill. So you can go to literati.com and see this digital landfill, and I think it's only a year old, but it's very, yeah, and it's very engaging. So that's one way that we can work with these brands, because I'm sure they don't want to see their brand, Coke or whatever it is, in a beautiful resort or an island or on a hike. So it's one way to engage with these companies. Not pointing the finger at them, but say, hey, how can we collaborate and get your waste off of the land or wherever it might be.
Yeah, we're all instant activists now with these phones. Last question, and then, or last two, and then I have to split.
Oh, I'll just cap the earlier discussion, because we were dealing with the go-around deposit redemption centers that were all caps, and so we did some research, and it's my understanding that the deposit centers cannot reject PET bottles that have a cap on them. So you get your 5 cents back, but you also get the scrap value, and the cap adds to the weight for the scrap value. And the processors of PET are all capable of floating out off the cap. So there's actually a financial incentive for people to return it, but it needs to be explained, so we need to do a better marketing to cap it and create that business.
Interesting, I didn't know that.
Well, I started doing some preliminary educational outreach on the empty crush and cap language to instruct people how to recycle plastic bottles better. And I think that would be something that could help if it was on every bottle. It would reduce servicing frequency, truck trips, and keep those caps on. So I think that language itself, just putting instructions on the plastic bottle, could save a lot of those caps. But has anyone ever looked into doing some sort of corporate origin study for the trash that they're finding on beaches? I know you'd be opening yourself up to a lot of lawsuits.
Say that again, corporate origin study?
Yeah, then you can do a characterization, but instead of by material type, by the producer that's making the trash.
Interesting, I don't know of any, but that's an interesting idea, and it kind of ties into what she was saying about literati. It sounds like that's what he's trying to do in a sense. So, well, with that, thank you so much. Really, really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, Anna. I thought I knew a lot about that subject, but clearly I was really, really wrong. And sometimes reality can be so hard to take, but the information you provided is critical and important for us to help the cause. So thank you, you're an inspiration, and on behalf of CRRA and our industry, keep up the good work, and thank you for all your efforts. Thank you. All right, so we're going to tackle a few housekeeping items. Yeah, maybe tomorrow you guys will be on it. So I'm just going to remind you